My name is Celia Young. I came in from California. I may not break down and cry, but who knows? When you're in the moment, you don't know. I met Sonia when I entered the Gestalt of Cleveland. Studying Gestalt is actually the first time I realized that America could be my home. Because the whole notion around psychology and Chinese culture just don't get along. I mean, we don't talk about how we feel. Then you enter Gestalt, there's all the work about feelings, nauseating level. So, so I met Sonia when I was a younger woman at the time, and Edwin actually was more of a teacher, but Sonia left such a great impression in me. And for a woman to another woman, it's very impactful. And I remember, see, I came up here because I need this prop. The entire time when she taught, she has this pair of glasses in her hand. This is the extension of her. She talked with this hand like this. So now I'm this way too. All my students remember me, say, she's got this thing on her hand. So, so she taught me not to waste words. Every time we do an intervention, she would say, take another word from it. Take another word from it. So I learned in my younger days, I didn't know what is it I'm scanning. Now I'm an older woman now. I can scan things. I can actually see things without having anybody explain to me. This comes with time. So I would like to describe that as, I see her as a samurai sword. That when you cut through the silk, there's no sound. But the impact is huge. It's like there's no blood coming out, but she cut through the bullshit. Sorry. You recorded that? Okay. She cut through the BS with kindness, and you don't even know what hit you. And you have to thank her for it. Just very, very amazing. I remember that. And so then I came here for more punishment about this thing about cutting and not see blood. And later on, she became my mentor because I remember somebody talk about looking for home, right? And as an immigrant, I live between two lives, two worlds all the time. So looking for home is like a lifetime pursuit. So I remember sitting sun-filled room in her house here. She curled up in her chair, I curled up in my chair, and we talk. And it was so great. I think the biggest thing I learned is about inquiry from her. And this world right now needed so badly of inquiry. And so when I finished here, in the last few years, I'm also noticed that she sends email, right? There are 4 seasons, she sends email describing the season, and I miss that so much. And then she also sent me an email every now and then remind me that I haven't talked to her for a while. She's very much like the way she did guild. It's very much like my mother. So it's like, okay, all right, Jewish mother, Chinese mother, the same mother, And I miss that. So I don't have grand things to share. I just have these little things that just leave me with this impression forever. My mom's gone now, and Sonia's gone. So I'm going to have to be the one who's making myself remember. Thank you.
The best woman I knew.
I'm Lori Zuckerman, and I'm standing here because
Sonia tried to teach me to be bold. And if I don't learn it now, she won't have another chance to teach me. This is the last opportunity. I was also part of, I guess we'd call it a supervision group, that actually started out as a supervision group, but morphed pretty quickly into, I guess I thought of it as Sonia teaching us how to be human beings. And over time, I have taught my clients how to be human beings. In fact, I just said to a client recently, I've had this client and his company for 14 years, and I said, you know, I just want you to know I'm not really interested in business anymore. I'm interested in this human development. And that's what I want to be doing in my life. So I just want to give you a heads up. We've worked together for a long time, and this is what I want to be doing. And he looked at me and he said, Lori, that's why we hired you. And I often said to him, Sonia said, my teacher said, Sonia said. So he knows Sonia even though he never met her. But the story I really want to tell is I've been married, it will be 36 years in October. And when I was we were moving into our 25-year anniversary, I knew that there was something about my marriage. My husband is a wonderful man, but there was something that just wasn't working in our marriage. And my husband is an engineer. He works for NASA. He worked for NASA for 31 years. And if you just imagine all of your stereotypes about what that might be, you got it. And I also have an engineering degree, and I worked as an engineer for a long time before I detoured into organizational development and learning how to become a human being. And so I imagined telling my husband that I thought it would be a good idea for us to see a therapist, and I knew that wasn't going to sit well. So I said to him, you know what would be really cool to do for our 25th anniversary? I said, I study with Sonia. And what she does, her whole process is about telling people what's good about what they do. Why don't we go and learn what's good about what we do? So we sat with her. We actually met with her for 2 hours one day and 2 hours the next day, 4 hours total. And if you were to ask Steve, he would tell you that she changed our marriage. And I would tell you the same thing, but what's more important is Steve would tell you that. And what she said, she listened to us, we talked, I talked, Steve talked, she listened to us interact with each other. And in the way that you all just described, with the samurai sword, she looked at us and she said, you don't tell each other stories. And that was the whole intervention. And that's all it took. And so here we are, telling stories about Sonia. And it was Sonia who taught me and my husband to tell stories. I'm glad I was bold.
I'm Gordon Wheeler, and two things, I think. There's so many things, that come flooding into your mind, and triggered then by everything everybody says. And certainly, Sonia is the person, as you said, Patricia, that I quote the most to clients, and so many, because she was so much pithier than I am, and so, but I wanted to talk for a second about, fellowships, learning to be human. And so that's what Edwin and Sonia did. They created these fellowships, so many of them. And this is one right here. And this is actually a number of them overlapping right here. And one of them they created, Edwin moved to Cambridge way back around 81 or something, to come to MIT. And after a little while, Sonia moved with him because she said otherwise he wasn't going to move back. So, the back and forth wasn't working. So then at that point, they started up the Boston writers, Gestalt writing group. And for the next 20 years, and I don't know if it's still going on, probably, we met very regularly, very faithfully, kind of a loose group, but with a core, and 7 or 8 of us are here from that fellowship. And it started out being the Gestalt Writers and Eaters group, because it was. Then after a while, we decided actually it was the Eaters and Writers group. But somehow, with the accent maybe on the eating, the group as a whole was very productive. So many more things being created out of the support and creative fellowship of that group. And then about 15 years ago, I went through a period where I was very ill. It was a tough period, and I was in and out of the hospital for about 6 months, and as much in as out. And it wasn't a very good prognosis. And when I began to get a little better and came home, and I was able to attend I was able to eat, and I was able to attend an Eaters and Writers group again. And Sonia brought champagne, which was very touching to me. It was not, And she said the reason she had brought it, she said, certainly we really want to welcome you back, and that's great. And you're alive, and that's generally a good thing. And, then I can't, not quoting you exactly, but she said, what I want to toast is that through the whole thing, you never lost your sense of humor in your emails and things. And I thought, gee, that's true. And it wasn't bravado. That there were so many funny things. Many people here have been through that kind of treatment. And there's some very funny things. I mean, like, they're in Beth Israel Hospital and naked and splayed like a frog, and they're doing tattoos for some kind of radiation aiming or something. And then somebody comes out of the lead-lined control booth with a Polaroid and takes a picture. It's like because they have to pin that picture to the record. So I said, that part was sincere, the humor, but I'm not so sincere about a compliment or a nice thing. So with typical deflection, I said, well, what else are you going to do? And she kind of went like this kind of hump shrug she would do. And I know there are lots of other things people do. So